Hello and good day. We're going to do a little tiny bit of honing and stuff. A little bit of honing. So I've got this old razor that's on my stones. It's just been moved up to the 2000 actually, so I'll keep a bit of tape on just for, well, however many laps I feel like, and I'll just get some of them little scratches out from the 1000 with the tape still on, and then I'll start chasing it with the tape off to the very apex. Got this Dorko 14 as well. This is the one that I've posted a few things up on the forums and rescaled. Really happy with how it turned out. Just looks lovely. Just a lovely razor. Shade great as well, and that was with the edge that it come with. So like today, because I put a tiny bit of sellotape on the very edge. So I put a little piece of sellotape, I fold it over, and then I chop it with a pair of sharp scissors. So it's just sort of like 3 or 4 mil away from the edge, and it seems to create like a good kind of, a bit of a safety net for me for when I'm just doing my rescaling. And I don't know what edge this had on it, other than I can tell that it was a synthetic. I'd say, you know, if I was going to say what, I'd say a 12,000 synthetic, around that mark. But when I asked the dude who I bought it from, it's pretty common in the razor world. You buy a razor and then they're your friend until you get it, and then you ask them some questions about it and you don't hear nothing back. So I said, like, you know, what was it done on, finished on, tape, was it used, nothing, like nothing back. So first port of call is we've got to find out whether it was taped. So, well, how you do that is you put it on the stones and see if it's hitting the very edge, the edge of the edge, the apex. So I've already put, oh sorry, I haven't actually, no, I've already put some marker pen on that just so I can show what I want to show on that. And we're just going to be showing you how to use a pen, marker pen, to your advantage. So like, before I got my scope, I used a pen, a marker pen. I was using that for years. Does a very fine job. And then, hang on, and then I bought a job lot of things. I can't remember, I think it was stones. I think it was me chasing stones a little bit. So I got this little loupe, and then I bought this little loupe as well. Hard to tell. Hang on, let's have a little, let's find out where the focus is. See, if I was going to say what one was slightly more powerful, I'd say that one's a little bit more powerful, and I forget what magnification that is. But these are little camera loupes, GI 1.5, whatever that means. So you don't want the jewellery ones, you want camera loupes, and you want something about ×8, ×10, and then you're sort of good to go really. That's kind of like a good, well, magnification basically. You get any of that on there? But you can see a lot through these. You can see enough anyway, and that's all. Like if you really wanted to delve into honing, I'd say get a marker pen, which most people have got, and get a little camera light. You can pick them up on eBay. You don't have to get nothing fancy. Like, you know, this is just an old one I found. This is a new one. It does the job. I prefer using this one just because it's metal, just because it's old. So you can do your investigations on that. You know, you can find all the chips that you need to find on these. You know, if you see a chip with this, you need to kind of get rid of it still. You know, I'm happy with the razor turned out. I've got better at my free pinning. I've got it a bit tighter without any sort of marred edges or anything. I did scuff the scales ever so slightly, so I've got to put some of this tape on it either side. I'm gonna hole punch a little hole and then put the tape over it next time. So hopefully it might save me 20 minutes sanding. I did my old G10 liner with 2 little brass fillets. I actually come across some other dude who's been doing the same thing. It's like I always say, there's nothing new under the sun, man. Everything's done in it, you know. Let's try and pattern it. Joking. So yeah, I'm excited to re-hone and reshape. So this one, the old James Barlow Sons, as you can see, look, it's got a really big kind of smile to it. Well, actually, it is quite a big smile, isn't it, when you put it like that? It is. You know, line it up in the middle, big smile. And spine's got a smile and it's not quite as big as the edge. So with that, sometimes you might struggle hitting a part of the edge. And I did. I was struggling to hit the heel, especially on one side. So on this side, I'm sure it was this side, it was a country mile off under the microscope. It really was. Even on the 320 grit, I was just like, man, this is just going to take forever. So what I did is I bread knifed just the heel, very, very gently, checking a lot of the times. I could have done it with that. I could have been checking it with this, but I was doing it under the scope just because it's quicker. You know, so I bread knifed it until this side, the bread knifing was basically nearly hitting where my bevel was kind of heading towards, and it seems to have helped it along a lot. I think I did take a little video of this on the microscope because I wanted to do like a 1000 through to the J-net bevel sort of show as well, like, because it's interesting to me. So we're going to just have a little look here. It's on the 2000 grit. We'll have a look. So, right, first off though, I need to assess this Dorko. And because it's such a precious razor to me, I want to do my very best by it. And that means that the least amount of kind of sort of damage in a way. So because I'm just at the assessing sort of stage at it, we are gonna, it's 12,000 Shapton. We're gonna assess it with that first. So we are, put a little bit of, you know, marker pen on the very edge. Always try and like imagine that you're going that way with the pen. It don't really matter how fine, you know, like I'm doing it like that, but my pen's always going that way. So it don't affect the very apex of the edge. It saves your marker pen a bit as well. Right. Did my pinning quite tight on that, on the pivot. I did quite well with my pinning as well. You can barely tell that the pin's a pin. That one you can't tell that the pin's a pin. It just looks like a nice little blob of brass. That one you can tell a little bit. If it loosens, it means I can play with that side a little bit. But you know, you kind of, it is what it is at the pivot end. But the non-pivot end, you can really barely tell there is a pin in the collar at all. It's kind of just one piece, and that's what I aim for. Try anyway. Right, let's get the old scope at least warmed up. Hope you're well enough. Been honing plenty of razors. I've had a load of sort of like DE razors come through me the last month. Chasing straights, every now and then I see some DE and SE and safety razors and whatnot. So I kind of snap them up. I'm there, you see, I'm already looking for straights. So what we're going to do, so first off, does it sit flat? And Philharmonicas and 14 types generally nearly always kind of sit flat, because that's their thing. Like they were a premium razor of the day, that there's no wobble either side. So that means that it's going to sit nice on the stones, or at least it should do. So what we'll do is we'll just do, when you put marker pen on it, you can almost feel like the marker pen grabbing a little bit. It's a bit concerning a little bit when you first do it. Right, and the other thing I'd like to do is I generally like to let it, if I've got time, I ain't really got time today, but if I've got time I'll just leave that razor for a couple of minutes. And I let all the water just sort of, you know, dissipate from the very edge. And then I can really see under the scope. But we haven't really got the time today. Don't be sat there waiting, do you? Right, so, hang on. Let's have a look. There we go, we're recording. Let's bring the old gadgetry down a little tad. Right, so we're at the heel, and as you can see, the very edge of the heel I'm not hitting, but that don't concern me at all because that's just one lap. Right, so if I was to guess, I'd say this was at the very least on the higher grits finished with no tape on, because if you leave the tape on to the finishers under a microscope, you can see sometimes a little tiny film of marker pen, which is why I stopped using it. Oh, I'm just getting stuck on one of the other stones there. So heading towards the toe now, and as you can see there's a few little swipes of, but generally it looks like it's hitting it lovely, doesn't it? So that's one side, that's the non-face. So this is the face side. So as you can see again at the heel, it's not really hitting right at the very edge of the heel, but that don't matter, especially as it's gone up the curly whirly bit. But as you can see, that we're not hitting it as well this side, especially on the heel. So we've, at the very least, we've got quite an uneven bevel at the heel, but that don't bother me because I only care about the very apex of the edge, and it does look like, to me, we're still hitting it, so it's like null and void really. And you could put some pressure on that side, you could make the bevel bigger, but it's almost pointless. So we're past the middle. It's not really hitting that side that great. So on the face side towards the toe, we're definitely lacking. But remember, that was only one lap, so it's just only an indicator. So let's do another lap, and we're really doing sort of like the least amount of pressure we can kind of get away with, but at the same time making sure, you know, that it's sort of the razor's sitting on the stones. You can see it, I can feel it release a little bit on that toe, so I wouldn't be too surprised if on the face side it's still not, it's not a problem. Nothing's really a problem, nothing we can't fix. Right, so this is where the masking, I can't really call it masking tape today. Right, there's a little tiny wibble on the apex there. Right, so now we're hitting it. So on the second lap, we're hitting the very edge on the bit that wasn't. Let's have a little look at the toe. So it's only really as it goes around the corner a little bit. Let's have a little look here, because the reflection changes as you go along sometimes, just with the slight undulations of metal. Right, well, I'm relatively confident that this was at least on the higher grits. Let's see if we can't. At least on the higher grits we were tape off, because I was doing some little experiments with my other Philharmonica. Well, not my other film, but my other 14. Right, there's a few little tiny wibbles on the very apex. So after I'd rescaled this and took the tape off, I took it to my very fast slick horse strop linen first. Yeah, so I'm confident about that. And I did a number of laps, and it didn't, sorry, I just knocked the camera, it didn't improve the edge. Like, it wasn't popping airs afterwards. Right, it weren't popping airs that brilliantly when I got it after loads of laps, and it was meant to be shave ready and everything, but there's a caveat. So it weren't popping airs like an Expect 14-2, but it shaved marvellously. It really did. I was very impressed with the shave on it. and I did do another video featuring it, I think, I'm sure I did. So what we're going to do is we're going to take it back to just make sure. I do know my colours and my stones, but I still always check. So this is a 5,000. So what we're going to do is we're going to take it down to a 5,000 briefly, and we're just going to have a little looky. But before we do that, I'm just going to run this razor on this stone a couple of laps and let it dry so I can show you. So this has got a marked edge, and this is really the extreme side of your rolling X's. Like, you won't get away with doing basically any other stroke really other than your rolling X's. This is why I always say to people when they start out honing, start practicing your rolling X strokes straight away, because it's one of the hardest to master, but when you get good at it, you'll be able to hone any razor. There's no razor that you can't hone. You almost don't need to worry about the relationship from the spine to the edge as much, because you're manipulating a point of the razor. So like, that's exaggerated, but it's up now, look. So obviously the point of contact's there and there, and as I go through it, you can see the water change. That it's just rolling up the very apex right to the end. You know, you don't want to exaggerate your lift and your tilt. You want it to be as natural as the razor allows you to be. And in a way, oh, that was a bit dangerous. The razor will kind of talk to you in a way through feel and touch, but you can only do that once you've practiced enough. So never get disheartened. See, I can see that that's it in nearly all of it. I'll just give it one more lap just so you can see. Barely any pressure at all. And we'll let that dry. So this is still on the 2000. When I'm wiping it, I'm not wiping the edge by the way, I'm just wiping the bulk of the water behind it. Right, we'll just let that dry, and then we can have a look under the microscope. I didn't press stop, so I'm going to have to edit that, which is always a ball ache. Right, what are we doing now? We are back on the Dorko 14 Swedish steel. I've still not found another Dorko 14 Swedish steel. I don't know of another 14 with Swedish steel, like a stamp on it or anything. So if you know, I'd love to know, because I do love learning about my razors. And this one is with me until I pass. Even if I'm lucky enough to get to old age, I can't shave with a razor anymore, like straight. I mean, I'll probably still just keep this one so I can look at it. Sell the rest of the straights. Keep this one just to look at. I was wondering whether to put the scales from the Parker 101, sorry, the 1001. But then I come across my Hengel's 401, and I thought, no, let's do another one of them. And I'm pleased I did. It's almost got like even though it's a bit garish, so it would be a bit garish for someone, I understand that, especially like traditionalists sort of, but it's almost sort of understated pretty. I don't know, is that just me? I don't know, but I like it. It's a really nice material. Bobbling, or is that? Just wash that off, make sure. So I don't really use hardly any tape in my my marker in my processes anymore, but it's just because well, you could say I've truly got my eye in. So nearly everything's touch and feel now. I know if I go through certain processes, I'm going to come out the other side with a decent edge. It's almost, I can do it on autopilot in a way. Like I mentioned in a couple of my shaving videos, I definitely feel like upped my edge game the last month. And it's just because I've put sort of little things, kind of like little set checkpoints, I guess. And I'm just a bit more rigid with those checkpoints. And because I'm being a bit more sort of due diligent with those points, I seem to be saving a bit of time but also getting better edges slightly. And it's like I said in my shaving video, you get to a point of getting good edges and then you're just searching for little tiny increments of improvements. And I found sometimes it's just spending a little bit more time on the lower grits. Like I think most people who hone kind of razors, and you know, if it's not purely just, you know, you're honing one a month or something, if you're honing quite a few razors, you can be a bit guilty of maybe rushing through them sometimes. Like, to be fair with me, I'm more guilty of rushing through a razor that I know is mine. Like, because I'm bloody excited to shave with it. Sounds a bit silly in a way, doesn't it? But I want to shave with it. But I've got rid of that now. So even that side of me, I've sort of... The reason I'm going so slow doing this as well is because this razor is pretty precious to me. Not just because it costs a lot of money, it's just... It's a very fancy razor to me. Just you know, a piece of razor history really. If you don't know much about Dorko, well, I think the general consensus across the board is they were known to be one of Germany's, Solingen's premier razor makers. When Solingen steel was probably at its very best, they were importing a lot of Swedish ore. They also had their own mines, so there was a good few German companies that actually started up their own little mines and stuff in Sweden so they could get it a bit more direct, because there was a lot of quotas going around, restrictions of shipping ore out here, there, everywhere. And also Sheffield was taking a lot of the ore from Sweden, so it got very competitive. But I've honed 3 Dorkos. This is my 3rd, and they've all just been great steel, really great steel, sat lovely on the stones. I nearly kept one of the other ones, but it just had a bit of home wear. It's like I've said before, I'm not anti home wear either, you know. But a razor's got to talk to me nowadays, otherwise I'd end up with hundreds. Nice gentle laps. Even this is a form of kind of like an X stroke. Like, could I just sit it flat and go over? Well, you can, but I look like I'm missing the toe. That side, yeah, it looks like I'm missing the toe ever so slightly. That's why it's always just X strokes for me. It does take a little bit longer to hone razors. Like, and if I do get a razor where I can just sit there with it nice and flat, well, I'll sit there with it nice and flat. Right, that's got really sort of sticky, as I think everybody calls it. I can feel that, like there's a form of a new resistance. And that generally means you're getting a nice bevel. I'm putting a little bit of pressure on the toe, about halfway over my lap, so about there, sorry with the razor, so about there. I apply a little bit more pressure on my finger. How much? Who knows, not a lot, especially on anything over the 1000 grit. I do play about with pressure a little bit if the razor's all over the shop. At the end of the day, you've got to try and manipulate the razor to the stone with some razors. I've been playing around a lot more wedges recently. I've got some wedges now that I've got multiple hours behind them and they're still just nowhere. But that's the game with the wedges. Right, let's have a little look at this. Before I carry on though, I've got to do something because it really... Let's not do that. Let's just do this job now, because you've got to do it at some point. You can't just get these off with rags. I just like using a bit of, what's it called? IPA. Is it IPA? Nearly pure, 99% alcohol. Just don't start swigging it on the job though. Don't reckon it'll improve your honing. The old marker pen served its sort of purpose, didn't it? Right, get all fingers and thumbs in. So that's recording, we're at the heel on the non-face side. So now we're looking for any form of blemish on the very apex, that's what we're looking for. So there's a line there, but I think that might be where I was marking it with a, rubbing it with a marker. So there's a tiny little something going on right in the middle of the screen there. So whatever, it's going to have a few more laps on the 5000. So there's a tiny little roll of something going on there. I'm being really finicky. Let's put it that way. I might actually go down to a 2000 just for... Because the thing is, I'm going to hone this now, and when will I hone it again? Well, the answer to that is, if I look after it, it might be damn near never. Because this has got a form of super steel on this razor. Like I said, the edge wasn't that great when I got it. Add some rolls, and I'm going to go back to a 2000 just for a little bit. Add some sort of rolls, and to me it looked like it had some wire edges, or at least what I call kind of wire edges, but it still shaped great. So I was like, wow man, this bodes well. Don't drop your stones, told you about this before. Luckily I dropped it on a wood floor. If you drop them on concrete floor like I have done, they shatter, and you're lucky if you've got anything left. Disturbing day that was. Right. Gonna do some little V's, nice and gentle little V's. And we'll have another little look. It's another stroke that I highly recommend you practice. Little V's. A lot of the understanding and the writings from, well, my Japanese kind of readings suggested that little V's and everything are great for getting rid of the burrs, and they do quite a lot of little strokes, quite a lot of little backwards and forwards, and I think that does come from the tradition of the camisoles are flat, if you know what I mean, like they're designed to be flat, so you know, your camisole shouldn't have any wobble on it. The relationship with spine and the very apex. is a bit different from the Western razors, but I quite like doing the V-laps. A bit more concentration's needed in a way. It just goes to prove you don't need great big long stones, isn't it? Like, you know, 3-inch stones all you need. And I remember reading years ago that the little Japanese finishing stones were small, so you could only do little laps. And the reasoning behind that, supposedly anyway, this is what I've read, you know, I can't really confirm it, is because the smaller the laps, the less chance of any form of burr or wire edge. What I have read as well is because it's meant to concentrate the mind and that, so. Right, we don't want to do too many on the 2000 because we work for what? The Self-Preservation Society of Razor Metal. Actually stands for most of my life really, but when in terms of razors, even though I'm only taking nano slivers of metal off, I still know I'm doing it, so it still disturbs me ever so slightly. But to get the very apex of your razor wonderful, you have to do these things, and I could see a few little marks and that. Let's see if we've got some out of it. You know, things don't have to be absolutely perfect, especially when you're looking under a scope. Because I am the firm believer that even though this scope's not marvellous, it's not, you know, like, you know, it's not the best scope in the world, you're still seeing too much really. Right, so we have officially got 2000 striations now. Striations, whatever they call them. Which is good. So that again, you can really see where we're hitting the razor now. So there's a slight tiny wobble in the whole bevel there, but I don't think it's going to be bother. And there's the most tiniest of dips just there. But again, we're not looking for perfection, but we're looking for something that represents it nearly. Right. Well, yeah, we're definitely hitting whole edge anyway, aren't we? So let's see. So it's really lacking on the heel here, but let's see if we can get it. I do still believe, look, you can see it glinting at the edge. We'll move forward. I'm going to give it a few more laps on the. See if we can't find a wobble from this side. And when I mean wobble, I mean just microscopic wobble, but yeah. So I do believe there's something there slightly as well, and that does about the same place the other side. Marvellous still though, you can see it. I always say the 2000 shows you how the steel is a bit. There's a tiny little, it's in the middle of the screen, but it's near the toe. We can suffer a tiny bit at the toe. I do use the toe of a razor quite a bit, but I'm going to put a tiny bit of pressure on that toe. What we can kind of do. God, it really grips. I'm barely putting any pressure on my finger. It's just because I want to just hit that toe. It really grips it. You can really feel it, especially on that side. Very gently. No big changes. Consistency is key. Right, this is the side with a really small bevel. So we're just going to give it a few little touchy uppies. See if we can't get it a tiny bit more present. Like I said, I'm not concerned with it though. Because to me it does look like it's hitting. Lovely noise on the 2000 I find. You can feel it grinding, but in a way it almost starts polishing good steel. Like you can notice it more when you go from the 1000 to the 2000. I've gone backwards a bit today. Whatever that's saying, we're saying it's enough now. Just wash the blade off because you don't want to be taking any 2000 grittage. I'll change my cloth as well today, just because it has got a very fine edge. We want to put all the odds in its favour. Right, let's go back onto the 5, put the 2 out of the way. It should really reveal itself now. I'm quite confident that this is going to be alright going forward now. We'll just have a little, I don't like doing any of the nail stuff past sort of definitely past 2000, especially when I take the tape off. That's time for me. It's like a reset. You know, be extra careful of my edge now. Yeah, I can feel that biting straight away. It feels nice. Because I know I'm lacking on that here ever so slightly. I am tilting up the razor a bit more than necessary, just to make sure like the sort of like the very beginnings of the flat part of the edge are hitting. Just concentrating on that heel a bit at the moment. Especially on this face side. Like 14 razors, they can have really small bevels. It's like that razor I honed the other week, that Butler, still pops into my mind every time I just such a tiny bevel on it. It shaved like a dream, it really did. Stop exaggerating the heel a little bit now. Start from a very kind of flat position, but in a way I'm still doing the rolling X. My pressure You know, it's changing through the lap. It's definitely quite bitey now. Tiny bit juddery. Let's have a little look, see what's going on. Yeah, it looks pretty good to me. We're going to go a few more laps. Can't really find those things I was finding. Let's see if we can look down that near that toe. I think that's where it was, the middle of the screen, just the middle of the screen, but it looks less. But I saw it more from this side, didn't it, the face side. So again, let's make sure we can find the very edge on this very, very thin, yeah. So even though it's not equal, it's still hitting it, innit? I can't see any form of shadow kind of thing, or darkness. Right, there's a couple of bits in the middle here, aren't there? I still think there's a tiny, tiny, like microscopic dip just there. Well, what will show it is the 12,000, so that 12,000 shows everything up. It can be a bit of a pain sometimes, because again, sometimes I think it shows a bit too much. Right, yeah, look, I don't know if you can see it, but right in the middle of the screen, just there, there's the most tiniest of tiniest of nicks. One not, to be fair, I'm not actually bothered about, but we're going to give it a few more laps anyway, because I reckon there's still some 2,000 striations on it, so whatever way we look at it, we'll try and get a few more of them scratches out. We've still got the 8, we've still got the 12, we've still got the J-nap with the slurry, so you know, sometimes the scratches are a bit irrelevant. I can remember when I first started really getting into my honing, everybody was like, oh, you've got to make sure all the scratches are out from the previous stone. Like, and there is, I feel, a truth in that, but I think sometimes it's a bit overkill as well, really. Most of them, that's what you got to try and get. Does depend, what you're doing with the razor afterwards, I guess, so as well. You know, some people like to go straight from their stones and shade, don't they? I can understand it a little bit more, but if you're going to do a fair bit of stropping on it, and stropping's going to sort the very apex out. gripping. Really has got quite grippy now. Let's just give it one more kind of load of laps with a load of water and we'll have a look. I reckon that's probably good to go forward now. Let's have a look. Right, yeah. So some of the scratches I could see beforehand, most of them are now what I'd say gone. The 5000 does scratch a bit. Once you get your iron with your stones, you will notice. Well, I say mine does. The ceramic stones, so they're known to be a little tiny bit more scratchy. But yes, it's a very even, consistent edge now, I feel. Let's just have a look at the other side. Yeah, I can still see that on that hill, even though it's tiny. Let's just change the focus a bit. That's a bit better. Yeah. So to me, that's a 5000 edge now. There's a few little scratches there that might be left over from the two, but If you remember, that is the area that when we did the marker pen, a tiny little nick, yeah. See that, I told you, once you get polishing it shows them more. So because of that, we will give it a few more laps. Oh, just I just sprayed myself in the face. Oh dear. So we'll just give it a little tiny bit of pressure. What side was it predominantly? So it's this side. Give it a tiny bit more pressure on the heel, let go, about halfway, tiny bit. Very, very conscientious, I think is the word. Because again, I'm not trying to change anything, I'm just trying to help with a point of contact. Because like I said, if you remember, the marker on the first laps was lacking in that area. So I do think naturally the razor is resisting wanting to, well, naturally touch the stone basically with my stroke. So somebody else would get this razor, they'd do that marker test, and they might find that they're lacking somewhere else on their lap. And that's all because we're doing ever such slightly different things. It's one of the things that kind of annoys me with, well, I think it's sharpening on the whole. I can't really say it's razor. I think it's just sharpening. You get quite a bit of my way's better than your way kind of thing. And you know, I'm quite friendly with a few razor people that do, you know, a fair amount of honing, a couple of YouTuber dudes, and we all do it a bit different, but we're all getting edges that are good. So it really is like each to their own. Like you have got to find your own way. Like, you know, I can remember, cool, I don't know, 3/4 year ago, I was in conversation with somebody for quite a while, and then they ended up buying a couple of razors off me and like Shave Ready. And it was kind of before I did sort of more honing videos. He was like, can you do some videos so I can kind of copy your way and everything? And I can remember saying to him at the time, it's like, you know, it's a bit like cooking a cake. You know, you can all get the same recipe, but the cake can turn out different, can't it? And it's the same with sharpening. I think it's even more so with razors, because it's such a fine edge. But you've got to find your way. And if you want to read one of the best books on it, well, there's a Japanese fella who made some of the best razors the world's ever seen. He did do quite a few Western razors, but most of them are Kamisoris. And his apprentices are still making them now. Is it Iwaski? I'm sorry if that's offensive. But you can find his like sort of pamphlet thing. And it's the only honing thing that I would ever read. And I read it kind of once a month. And I've said this on my other videos. It just, nearly every time I read it, I get something from it. It's been translated by somebody who did their very best to get the nuances of the Japanese translation to English. But that's my reference guide. I don't bother reading anything else. You can get so jumbled. Fundamentally, you've just got to get some razors and practice. Concentrated effort. Right. go down that one side. That side is my problem child. Right, so straight away, yeah, that's looking good, isn't it? Look how tiny that bevel is just there though. It's there though. Right, so let's get a good focus. Heading towards the middle, there was a bit sort of funky thing going on here. I think it was there, middle of the screen, but it's looking good now. It's definitely not something I'm concerned with. Yeah, scratch patterns are a little bit better. Still not perfect though. Still not perfect. In the middle of the screen, there's a tiny microchip there, but seeing too much. Seeing too much. Right, so look, like I said, look, now that I've started polishing it, look, middle of the screen, you can really see that little nick. But because it's just one lone little nick, tiny one there, but it's way too out to me bother. Because it's just that one little tiny little lone nick, we're going to leave it. We're going to move on. Because I don't think my face will ever feel it. And there is only one judge of a razor, and that's your face. I hope I'm not getting my big head in this video like I did one of my other videos recently. Right, yeah. Let's go up a stone. Let's wash the razor off. Let's change cloth again. Current 8,000. Old 8,000. Brand new stone. Had it less than a week. Dropped it on a concrete floor. That's all that was left from it. No kidding. And I used that for months practicing my V's. And then I come across one second hand. It was a bad day, that was, I tell you. Gutting. But I practiced my V's for months. I got my V's really good. And I'll probably make some finger stones out of it. Let's see if I can't master that. I'm interested about that sort of life. Nice and smooth, not biting at all, not very sticky. See if we can't feel any of the changes. Definitely getting a bit more sticky. Should really kind of start seeing the difference on the old polish on this stone. You can shave straight off of this stone. If you're good at stropping, you can get an edge really good off this stone with stropping, especially a bit of loaded, pasted stropping. But for a lot of people, 8,000 is plenty good enough. And I've got to admit, I've never really shaved off of it because I've got my 12, so I've always just took it to the 12. Some weird little flecks in it. Let's have a little look. First look under the 8. It's getting very shiny. It's a good edge, isn't it? Good to go, I think. Let's just check this toe. See, it's a tiny bit more scratchy again, isn't it? So there's definitely a little tiny bit of lacquer wanting to touch the stone this end, but not enough to have any. There's that little nick in the middle, hang on. There you go, look, middle of the screen. Tiny little, well I call them dents. because to me that looks like it's been sort of jabbed. But because it's just a one-off little thing near the toe, I just truly don't reckon I'll not ever notice it. And because it's at the toe as well, I spoke about it before, but my pet hate of razors is when people chase it around. You know, it's meant to be a straight-ish kind of edge, you know, like there's barely any gap underneath that razor. You're talking less than a mil. So it means the edge is meant to be straight. So if you start chasing it around, oh, it wrecks the profile of a razor. And it starts just wrecking it more and more for every bloody hone. Because then you have to start tilting it more, chasing it more. My pet hate it is. But then you've got a razor like that, James Barlow, you know, somebody shaped that razor like that. But when it's been shaped to that extent like that, it's marvellous. Just polishing now really. 8,000, you're definitely into, you know, it's not going to really correct anything at this stage. You can still do a bit of correction with 5,000. Especially if you want to add a bit of like Majiro slurry or any of the sort of Japanese slurry stones or whatever decent ones you've got. I've got a little cotton that works pretty well with some stones. But 8,000, you can't do any sort of corrective work really. You can put pressure on the edge, but all you end up doing is you'll end up turning your edge kind of away from the stone, and you're causing yourself more problems then, because you'll end up not hitting the very apex of the edge if you're not careful. Because you've got to try and picture what's going on, haven't you, with your pressures and stuff. So like, you know, if you got a razor, I'm not touching it with the edge, but if I started pressing too much on any part of the razor, what's happening is you're curling the metal. So instead of, you know, especially if you start pushing it there, you're almost creating like a bow in the profile of the razor. So you're actually honing behind the very apex of the edge. It's one of them things. It's getting really kind of biting. Let's just give it a little tiny bit at the toe on the face side, because that's still lacking in terms of scratches. See if I can't just help it along its way a little bit. Again, it's like no pressure, it is just me with my fingertip. Is this going to be my new favourite sort of shaver? I don't mean razor, but shaver. It probably is my favourite razor at the moment. Well, I say that, and it's hard to beat that Kiku can. I'm very fond of my Joseph Wilson tone that I did the micro peening on as well. That was just a tremendous shaver. But I think this one might do it, you know. I think this one might put my Philly moniker to shame a little bit. does feel like that's biting a bit more on the toe now, on the lap. Because it's the face side that's the problem, and on the toe. So when I was doing my face side lap, I was feeling it release, like the stickiness a little bit, but it feels like it's kind of grabbing it a little bit again now. And all of that feel is indicated and confirmed under the microscope. But let's have a little look at these loupes, just while I'm thinking about it. I haven't used them for ages, so I'm a bit out of touch with them. There you go. Yeah. So you can see it under the loupe. Yeah, you got to get your eye in a bit more. So that's the non-face side. Yeah, and you just got to get the light reflecting on it right, which is a bit of practice. But yeah, you can. I can see it's just not as shiny as the other side. There we go, this one. Yeah, there's not much in the magnification. If anything, I think the metal one might be ever so slightly more. Yeah, you can see. See, that's what I mean. You only need one of these. Get them for like £5, I think. The main reason I've got a scope is because it, well, other than I wanted one because I'm interested in this side of life, but it's because it speeds me up. Proper V's now, real shallow V's. I'm working with nearly just sort of 2 inches of my stone, you know, really. I just feel as well, like when you do these little V's, I feel like it's just something else in your armoury to make sure at some point on the lap, my little V lap, that the relationship between spine and very apex is like, I've got to be hitting it. I've got to be, you know, because I'm going this way, look. So there's no choice. At every single point roughly in this area of the stone, surely the razor's got to be hitting it. Well, that's my theory anyway. You know, that's what I kind of think. That's why I do it. You know, just with the weight of the handle, the scales, sort of pushing kind of down in a way. Even though I do believe I'm taking some of that weight out of the scales with my hand, there's still going to be this more, you know, downward pressure that way as you're doing your little, well, any lap, but not especially with the V's, I guess. Yeah, well, anyway, since I got good at doing my V's, I can definitely tell the consistency of my edges have got slightly better, so, you know, it's what you want. Consistency is key, man. It breeds confidence. It breeds results that you can gauge in a more reliable sort of manner. I'm gonna have a coffee after I've done this. I reckon this has got to be, oh yes, well that is a true 8000 edge on that part of the razor, that is. Tiny bit of chasing could be had there if you see. But again, I think you see too much with a scope. Yeah, it's looking nice, isn't it? Let's have a look at the face side. So you can see the tiniest of bevels. Let's see if we can find it properly there though, because that's where it's its absolute thinnest. Have to be careful because this razor can probably touch the plastic bit at the bottom. But there you go, yeah, I can see it. I think that is the tiniest little bevel I've ever seen. It's not ideal, you know, it's not, you know, in an ideal world you want it to kind of equal both sides, but you know, for me to get that equal I'd have to chase it on this face side, and it's not something I want to do really, because it will affect the actual edge profile. You don't need to do it, you don't need to do it. That little tiny nick's got a little bit lower in it, that even smaller. So again, this is just one of my theories, but I've always felt that if you use like, well, a natural stone, but I'm just going to talk about Jane Atts because, well, not Jane Atts, my Jane Att, because that's the one I know. And you use slurry. So I can nearly guarantee once I do the slurry stage, we'll lose that little nick. And I seriously do believe that's what part of the reason why slurrying and natural stones, they I don't know, it's like they help with the very apex of the edge, and in a way they can just finally take away any of those little tiny little problems that you can see while you're polishing and everything. And again, I don't think my face would feel it anyway, but I really do believe there's something in it with the slurry stones. Like, I'm no scientist, I don't bloody know. Cool, it feels nice, it feels sticky straight away, even though it's got all that water on it. I can feel that really thin bevel. Like, I can feel it on my finger. It feels just ever so slightly different. But it's hitting it, it's hitting it. Do some nice long flowy kinda. They still are like a form of rolling X stroke. You can see the water going from one edge of the razor to the other. You can see it in the swarf marks. I will put a tiny bit of pressure on the old face side and the toe. I might even do a little tiny bit on that little tiny bevel as well. But I do feel like we've done all that work really now. First proper stone I bought really, Shapton Pro 12,000. I could have saved myself 20 quid and gone for the 8 really, but I'm kind of pleased I did go for the 12. If you're kind of new to honing, I do suggest that you start on the higher stones when you start making your stone investments. And that's what these stones are, they're a form of an investment. How many stones do you need to really get shaving? Well, somebody said this to me the other day, and I say what I said to them. I think you can get going properly with 2 stones. You know, some would argue you only really need 1 stone, and that's the bevel setter, and then you could use, you know, strops and whatnot, pasted strops, which you can. But I think if you bought an 8000, you could buy an old sort of eBay clanger, as I call them, or you know, whatever razor, not a precious one, not a, you know, nothing of any real worth or anything. You get to work on that 8000 and you just learn so much, you know, because obviously it'd be slow going and you're not really gonna kind of do a lot on it, but you'll really start learning, you know, like keep marking your pen up, your razor edge, keep looking at it, you know, you'll really see what you're polishing, and then you're not wrecking the razor in the meantime. So then when you've got your laps down, you know, you've got a nice flow and your muscle memory's all set and ready to go. You can get your 1000. I suggest getting a 2000 first, because again you can do less damage, but you can set bevels with 2000, just takes a little bit longer. But at that stage in your honing sort of setup, you want to be spending longer on the stones, don't you? So it's almost like giving you a reason to practice. And like I said, you can set marvellous bevels with the 2000. And with the 2000 and the 8000, that's it. You're good to go, really. Obviously, you need a little strop, but you know, you could just make one of those little paddle strops that I make. You know, piece of leather, little V-laps. Don't you know, piece of leather. It's just, you know, there's other ways of doing it. Like other people use balsa and stuff like that. I can't really comment on it because I've never done it, and I like using leather. Oh, that feels really nice, doesn't it? I was contemplating just doing 5000 and then using my Tam O'Shanter and my water of air, but because this is, well, one of my most specialist razors, I thought, oh, I'll do that on another razor. And I've actually got, I can't remember if I'd said this already, but I bought a 7-day set a few weeks ago, but it only's got 4 razors in it, and they're bloody marvellous razors. Shoulderless, stabiliserless, Morton & Co. Cheapside was their address. Can't see anything cheap about the razors, but there's only 4 of them, and the 7-day case is just immaculate, so I'm going to be keeping that for my razors. And because I've got 4 razors that are all like, well, all the same metal, probably ground by the same man, or at least possibly. So yeah, I'm going to really test some of my natural edges on them. I'm going to go from 5000 Tam O'Shanter to my water of air on one of them. Got that cockle I want to do some more testing on, and I've also got these other, well, I've got at least one other razor hone that was sold like 100 years ago, kind of jobby, as a razor finisher. So, and it was Noz when I got it. It still had the like paper sleeve thing on it, a bit tatty in that, but yeah, you could tell it had never been, well, nothing on it. So I flattened it, and I've done a bit of research to it, and it's kind of all sort of heading towards, it's a Welsh stone, but I'll put it out there a bit more, see if we can't find out a bit more. Right. What we're thinking, gents? I'm thinking that's got to be somewhere near that. As Bloody leaving the microscope on today. You don't have to spend a lot of time on the higher grits, I always find. I'm probably spending a little bit more time on this one. But you're meant to do all your groundwork, 1000. For me it's more my 2000, that's my true bevel set in stone. To my eye, it looks very shiny. See if we can get it glinting for the camera. To my eye, it's very shiny indeed. Let's record. Oh yes, very shiny. Very, very shiny. You know, we've had this all the way down to a 2000. What's it took off of it? Nothing. No extra real home wear. The edge is lost like a nano mil. You really can't find that little dip on that side anymore, whereas I could just about find it. See if we can find a little tiny shiny bevel. She's there, isn't she? She's there, hiding in a little shadow. There you go. The smallest of bevels in the world. But it opens up nice, doesn't it, into a nice full bevel. A few tiny little microscopic things near the very apex there, but and again, that you can notice there's just a few more little scratches appear at that end. Let's just find that little micro, yeah, middle of the screen. That again, it's even less now, isn't it, really? Yeah, so I'm happy. We're going to move forward, and it's my favourite bit. It's the natural stones. Like, I always get really excited when I take the tape off on the 2000, but I get excited. I get excited as well going to the old natural stones. Because for one, it means you're nearly finished. Right, we'll get another brand new cloth. Mrs. loves me, the old wife. Ugh. You're using my cloths again. I've just got to spin this tray around. So I shouldn't leave razors open. Here's my Jane that. I will give it a little tiny bit of a livener, I think, as well. I haven't flattened this beforehand, but it stays flat for a long time, so I'm confident. I've not done many razors on it. I'm just going to give it a little bit of a livener though, because the one thing I have noticed with this Jane that is it can get a tiny bit glazed, which towards the end of your final honing is not a problem, because if anything, I guess you kind of want it to get a bit more glazed, but at this stage, notice as well, like, that's barely done anything to it. Like, I mean, like in terms of slowing, like for instance, it's quite a, it's not a coarse little diamond plate, but my first Jane and my other natural stones, you give it like 3-4 laps on that and it's bringing up slurry, but whereas this one, it barely touches it. It's a hard J-nut. When I bought it, it was classed as level 5. It has got like a little Japanese stamp at the bottom, but I can't make it out. Nobody's been able to help me out. But either. It's from Japan. I trust the dude I bought it off. I bought 2, ended up buying 2 J-nuts off him. He still sells them as well. And they were both advertised as from barbershop. And they both smelled like barbershop, they really did, especially my level 4 hardness. That really did smell like an old barbershop. It's a Maduro slurry stone. I've only got one. I would like to get some more money in it. Dear old job, man, buying stones. It's like I'd love to keep my level 4 J-nut because it was a real joy to use, it really was. But I just couldn't justify it, I really couldn't. Especially as I'm after a German home. I'll get my German home and I can explore other homes again then. But until I get a nice, sort of decent sized German home, I can't justify it. Right, so we're getting a good bit of slurry there. I don't like too much slurry. I like to keep it quite moist as well, if you know what I mean, quite wet. Favourite bit now. Just such a lovely feeling. Makes a lovely sound. Metal, decent metal. On a nice fine stone. It's just no kind of better feel, man, in sharpening world. You can see in the patterns of the water, the same problem areas are showing to me in kind of how the water's interacting with the blade, but I'm still confident that it's all going to be good. Basically, it's not 100% perfect, it's sort of 97, but like I've said many a time, the Self-Preservation Society of Razor Metals is what I work for. My job is to get the job done while saving metal. I get quite a bit of enjoyment out of it as well. Just means you're preserving things, you see. And some people have got this inner desire to preserve. That's because in more ancient times it was so flipping important that it was the difference between a family sort of heading into insignificance or thriving. Dogs are giving it to people outside. He's getting old now, but he's still got good hearing. And if you can see, look, that's actually got a little bit better. The way the water's interacting with the edge on the face side as we've gone along. It's like magic, this slurry, I tell you. It does do things, it really does. It's like, to me, it's like oh, it sounds a bit weird, but to me it's a bit like it's an equaliser. So if you have got any kind of like sort of problems in a way with your apex, it's almost just like the slurry and the interaction with the base stone and everything. They just sort it out for you. The icing on the cake. Yeah, it definitely is. That's just a bit better. I'm going to give it a little bit more sort of lappage today on the old natural stone, because again, one thing I've noticed over the last month is I've been in too much of a hurry, I think. And a razor that made me kind of realise that more was actually that Joseph Rogers wedge. So that Joseph Rogers wedge has got a tremendous great big wide bevel on it, as it's meant to, because it's a wedge. But I noticed even when I did the slurry, it just didn't really, it didn't haze it the way I expected it to haze it, and if anything it kind of was a bit scratchy. So that's really made me realise that I think just I wasn't spending enough time, and because of the width of that bevel, it showed it to me a bit more, if you know what I mean. Very sort of controlled now and just gentle, man. You've done all that hard work, ain't you? Leading up to this point. Not that I'm worried about messing anything up, because I'm totally not, but it's just nice to relax, listen to the metal on the stone. Really feels like it's doing something now. Right, I'll chuck some V's in now. Work through the slurry now, haven't we, really? If you notice, the slurry did change colour. It's something that you can get your eye into as well, and it is quite a good indicator. It goes well, like with my setup with this stone and that slurry, you can just see it go a bit sort of grayer, which I can only assume, but it's just means it's removing a bit of, well, metal basically, in the most tiniest of ways. Well, it's gone quite loose now, and I do find that with this stone, that when you get rid of the slurry, and it kind of goes the other way a bit. especially if you've got plenty of water. It's got quite a nice balance with the scales now. Right on the stones, it feels quite a natural sort of interaction. Because I use that G10 in the wedge, I added a bit of brass tubing on the first pin, like a separator. Sometimes I use plastic tubing, carbon fibre as well. But because this is a relatively biggish razor, I wanted to add a little bit more weight in there. That seems to have done the trick. Right. I think that's somewhere near for that stage. Recording, yes. Right, so yeah, that's got well, it's got the edge that I expect to see, let's put it that way. Quite a frosted sort of edge. Look on the face side. Yeah, it's got the edge that I expect to see, so that's what we want, isn't it? Let's try and find a little chip again. See, yeah, what I mean? Look, it's nearly impossible to see it now. It's actually, I can find it. Well, it's middle of the screen basically now. I can find the tiny little bit. It's even less. That's what I mean about the slurry. It definitely can have a positive effect on little tiny nodules of problems. And right, let's give this a good wash off. I'm not too sort of anal about the slurry being off in the most total of ways, because I'm still going to be using quite a bit of water, and it don't bother me. I just really don't think it matters. My face is not going to be able to tell. I mean, sort of give it a load of water again. I'll give it a load of water again in a minute. You can get a tiny bit juddery at this sort of stage. You can add, like, if it does bother you, it don't really bother me, but see it trying to get a tiny bit skippy. That's why sometimes I go to the V's. But if it bothers you, you can just put the most tiniest bit of washing detergent . But it can take a bit of your feel away, and I don't like that. So that's quite bitey, that is. Feels lovely. quite grabby. Feels lovely. And people have said to me like, why'd you go to 12 if you're going to do slurry end? And the simple answer is, I have gone from 8 to slurry to no slurry, just as you've seen. But I found my edges get less consistent. And because I'm somebody that hunts consistency, it basically just makes me not want to do it. For the sake of me spending another few minutes on the 12, I know I'm getting a more consistent result. The thing is with consistency, you see, it creates a relaxed mind, or at least helps, but also it means you're wasting less time on the hole. You know, if I hone 30 razors going from 8 to slurry to no slurry clear, you know, and out of 30 of those razors I'm getting 4-5 of those razors that to me just are not performing the way I kind of know they should be. Well, it means I've got to then put them razors back on the stones or more stropping. So again, it's like this multifaceted thing. Right, well, I think that's somewhere near. I've probably gave it a few bit more than I normally would, which is what I'm trying to just sort of generally do at the moment. See, we're kind of getting a bit dry on the water up the top there. Not where I'm really doing my razor honing that. Right, let's have a look. So what we're expecting now is just a tiny bit more sheen back to it. It should still be frosty, but just a bit more sheen, I think is the word. Yeah, and to me there is, well, a bit more sheen to it. As you can see, it's kind of, in a way, started polishing it again. It does make me ponder sometimes. If I spent like an hour doing that, will it polish it? And when I swapped over from synthetics to more natural finishing and stuff, God, didn't it play havoc with my mind? Because I got so used to almost like a mirror finish, 12,000 laser like. But you can see that bevel really well now. Look, it's funny, isn't it? Just the focus is just perfect for it. Yeah, it really played havoc with my mind because I got so used to the old mirror finish and that, and then you start getting all these scratches, and you almost think like the apex has got all these scratches in, but again, it's because you're just seeing a bit too much. So you can see that also. Look, so you can almost see where the very apex, especially there, look, is more shiny, and then just behind it, which to me is a good sign. There's a tiny little nick there, isn't there? Tiny. But see that little bit at the end is now really gone. And that is the magic of slurry, you see. That's the other thing I've kind of really sort of almost learnt in the last month. Right, well that's kind of it in terms of what we're going to do there. I'm going to go and get the paddle strops. I'm going to give it a little go on the old pasted paddle strops, and then I'll set it loose on my normal strops, and then, well, shave with it.